Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Anjali Srivastava, retired Zoology Professor, Jamshedpur Women's College, and this is my YouTube channel, Adarshaalaya, a platform to learn, and rather to learn and to teach also. Uh, we are discussing several topics, as I've already again and again I'm telling. The topics are given by you only, the students of MSc semester 1 and semester 4. Today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, that is colonial protests, and the subtopic is colonial protozoans. So before I start, I would like to mention that the topic given to me or requested from me was originally colonial protozoans, but when I've started collecting the materials, I have found more relevant term, the colonial protists, because it is the colonial protest. This is the larger aspect, this is the larger prospect rather. The protozoans as well as many other microscopic organisms are included in this group, that is the protists. In the very latest concept, the term protozoa has been almost abandoned by a lot of taxonomists because of their absence of पैराफाइलेटिक इवोल्यूशनरी ओरिजिन. बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है ये जानना कि जब हम क्लासिफिकेशन हमने देखा, टैक्सोनॉमी हमने देखा, हायरार्की ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन, और यूजुअली क्लासिफिकेशन के लिए जो सिस्टम फॉलो किया जाता है वो है कि कैरेक्टर्स इन कॉमन को चुन करके कैटेगराइज करते हैं हम एक ग्रुप में. बट अकॉर्डिंग टू विटेकर, जिसको सबसे ज्यादा एक्सेप्टेंस मिला था, वी हैव seen during while we were doing the systematics and taxonomy, that the most accepted categorization of the animal kingdom is 5 kingdom classification given by Whitaker, according to whom the entire living world can be divided into 5 broader categories or the kingdoms, which include the monera, which includes the prokaryotes, that is not defined nucleus, and then the monera continues into probably a tree, evolutionary tree, the so-called evolutionary tree that gave rise to the protists. And these protists are the very interesting group of organisms or the individuals or the living beings which don't have any cladistics, that is evolutionary significance में evolutionary अगर उनके ancestry देखी जाए तो ऐसे सारे living beings को बना करके प्रोटिस्टा ग्रुप बना है, जिनकी बहुत ही कंफ्यूजिंग फाइलोजेनेटिक हिस्ट्री है, दैट इज एंसेस्ट्री है. तो जिनकी एंसेस्ट्री अच्छे से मालूम है, जिनको फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्री एक्सप्लेन किया जा सका है, उनको कैटेगराइज किया गया स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम द यूमेटाजोन्स, और उनके ग्रुप्स बनाए गए. जबकि ऐसे माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स, माइक्रोस्कोपिक ऑर्गेनिजम्स रादर, जिनका कोई प्रोफाइलेटिक हिस्ट्री नहीं मिल पा रहा है, इवोल्यूशनरी ट्री में उनको नहीं रखा जा पा रहा है, उन सारे ग्रुप को मिला करके एक सेपरेट किंगडम बनाया गया रादर, दैट इज द प्रोटिस्टा. और उस प्रोटिस्टा को में वो मेंबर्स हैं जो यूनिसेलुलर, और यूनिसेलुलर टर्म जब विटेकर ने क्लासिफाई किया था तब विटेकर ने प्रपोज किया था, बट अब हम जानते हैं जब सेल थ्योरी के हिसाब से यूनिसेलुलर टर्म इज नॉट करेक्ट, रादर दे आर द एसेलुलर eukaryotes, that is they have a well defined nucleus, but apart from that well defined nucleus they don't have any multicellular type of concept. एक सेल की तरह की उनकी बॉडी है जिसमें एक सेल बाउंड्री है, एक प्रोफाउंड न्यूक्लियस है, और the intermediate space is filled with a matrix, that is the cytoplasm. So such simplest organization is of all the protists. So the protists are having a single cell or acellular eukaryotes. Highly organized nucleus and cellular organelles, most of them are protists are unicellular. However, some of the multicellular members also have been kept into this protist group, as their phylogenetic tree was not very much evident. उनकी evolutionary history या phylogenetic ancestry या clades उनके clear नहीं थे, इसलिए उनको भी include कर लिया गया है प्रोटिस्टा में. One more thing before I proceed, I would like to say, जब जैसा मैंने कहा, जब मैंने material include करना शुरू किया, my view was that colonial protozoa, colonial protists will be a very small chapter, but when I have started looking into the matter, I have got such interesting details that I couldn't confine me to. अभी भी जितना मैंने बनाया है अकाउंट, उससे भी ज्यादा बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग ये स्टोरी की तरह पढ़ने में लग रहा था. बट however, I have confined the matter into certain slides which will help, as this is the topic of MSc post graduation level. So definitely these slides will help you in making your good notes, but we are not going to see one by one all the points in all slides. So we will proceed a bit faster. So the protists are the living organisms which are having a single cell eukaryotes. Body एक सेल की बनी हुई है, well defined nucleus है, and उनका एक ancestral stock की तरह से उनको एक मोनेरा से मानते हैं, जो कि यूकैरियोट्स हैं, जिनमें बहुत well defined nucleus नहीं होता है. Then the protists include the protozoa, the animal-like protists, algae, the plant-like protists, and slime molds and water molds, the fungus-like protists. The fungus-like protists, the slime molds are the multicellular organisms, whereas the algae, the plant-like protists include the volvox. Volvox were initially considered as the colonial protozoa of phyto group, because they are having green chlorophyll like pigment, with the help of which they can photosynthesize. But now, according to the latest classification, the volvox has been kept into the algal group of the plant-like organisms of the protists. And the protozoa are the group that include the animal-like organelles or organisms that form the protozoans, and that explains how this protist body structure explains actually what would have been occurred in the past. कैसे एक सिंगल सेल स्ट्रक्चर या बिना सेल की एक सेल की तरह की एक बॉडी से मल्टी सेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स बाद में इवॉल्व हुए होंगे, और उनके लिए बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग थियरीज आए, जिनमें से ज्यादातर अभी भी हाइपोथेसिस की कंडीशन में है. अभी तक उनको बहुत वेल स्टैब्लिश्ड थियरी की तरह ऑथेंटिसिटी नहीं मिली है, बट द स्टोरी इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. नाउ लेट अस कम बैक टू द प्रोटिस्ट. द प्रोटिस्ट वी हैव सीन that they are of 3 types. 3 तरह के ग्रुप्स को में हम पढ़ सकते हैं प्रोटिस्ट को. प्लांट लाइक algae, animal like protozoans, and slime molds and water molds for the fungus like multicellular organisms. Now our main topic, let us come back to the main topic, that is the colonial protists. The colonial protists are individual protists form a colony-like structure, act as a large multicellular organisms. बहुत सारे प्रोटिस्ट इंडिपेंडेंटली रहते हैं, जैसे अमीबा है और प्लांट की तरह के माइक्रोस्कोपिक ऑर्गेनिजम्स हैं. दे आर लिविंग इंडिपेंडेंटली. वन मोर थिंग इज इम्पॉर्टेंट टू मेंशन, दैट प्रोटिस्ट के जो ये डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स बनाए गए हैं, इनमें इनका एक मेन पॉइंट लिया गया है, बेसिक पॉइंट. वन ऑफ द मेन पॉइंट्स इज देयर फीडिंग हैबिट. The animal-like protists, they are definitely heterotrophs और mixotrophs, जो बना बनाया खाना नहीं लेते हैं, बल्कि synthesized food लेते हैं, या कभी-कभी कुछ फॉर्म्स ऐसे हैं जो ऑटोट्रॉफ्स भी हैं, जो खाना बनाते हैं खुद से, या पैरासिटिक फॉर्म्स हैं जो डेब्रिसेस पे या स्कैवेंजर्स की तरह का अपना फूड लेकर के लाइफ बिताते हैं. And the autotrophs are the plant-like protists, जिसमें mainly आता है. One of the best example is volvox, and certain other examples are there. So these are the autotrophs. The plant-like are the autotrophs, animal-like are the heterotrophs, and the multicellular organisms may be considered as the mesotrophs. So this is the in very short the protist. Now let us come to the colonial protist. In colonial protist, as the name says, ये वो protist हैं जो individually independently रहते हैं, but they live together. कब एक साथ रहते रहते वो एक दूसरे के इतने आदी हो जाते हैं कि एक दो दे आर लिविंग इंडिपेंडेंटली, अपने सारे फिजियोलॉजिकल एक्टिविटीज वो इंडिपेंडेंटली स्पेंड कर रहे हैं, but still they are living together, and this living together is, it's in due course, in the course of time, it becomes so much indispensable that they can't imagine. आदत हो गई है, जैसे हम कहते हैं ना कि अब हम उनके साथ रहने की आदत होगी, उनके बगैर तुम अपनी लाइफ इमेजिन ही नहीं कर सकते हैं. तो इसी तरह से colonial protists might have been evolved, क्योंकि वो अपनी लाइफ तो इंडिपेंडेंटली बिताते हैं, बट उनको हम अलग अलग अब इंडिविजुअल की तरह नहीं पढ़ सकते हैं, नहीं स्टडी कर सकते हैं. दे आर लिविंग लाइक an individual with different members, and mostly they are of the same type. एक जैसे हैं, एक साथ रहते हैं, पर एक साथ रहते रहते धीरे धीरे एक दूसरे से अटैच हो गए हैं. इसका बेस्ट एग्जांपल है colonial protists में, animal like organisms में choanoflagellates. बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग इनकी कहानी है, that we will see. और volvox and the slime molds are the plant like and the fungi like protists. So these are the protists that together they are living independently, but they choose not to, because the benefits of living in a group outweigh living alone. अकेले रहने से अच्छा लगता है उनको एक साथ रहना. So they are living together. They work so well together, it can sometimes be difficult to distinguish between these colonies and a single multicellular organism. एक multicellular organism की तरह वो काम करने लगते हैं, एक साथ रहने लगते हैं. But this is not a symbiotic relationship of benefiting members of different species. एक साथ वो रह रहे हैं. In one sense they are benefiting each other, क्योंकि उनको बहुत literally वो कुछ ना एक दूसरे से कुछ भी नहीं ले रहे हैं, एक तरह से म्यूचुअल रिलेशनशिप में रह रहे हैं. बट internally they are interdependent on each other, but this cannot be compared with the symbiotic relationship, जिसमें दो अलग अलग स्पीशीज के लोग एक साथ रहते हैं और एक दूसरे को बेनिफिट करते हैं. यहाँ पर सेम स्पीशीज के लोग एक साथ रह रहे हैं और एक दूसरे को लैटर कोर्स में धीरे धीरे वो एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट भी करने लगते हैं, एक दूसरे को बेनिफिटेड भी करने लगते हैं. एंड दैट मे बी कॉल्ड एज एंडोसिम्बायोटिक रिलेशनशिप. इंटरनली वो एक दूसरे को, सेम स्पीसीज के मेंबर्स एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, एक दूसरे को बेनिफिट कर रहे हैं, एंड दैट is called as endosymbiotic relationship. And this relationship led to endosymbiotic theory of evolution of multicellular organisms. This is a very interesting fact that this endosymbiotic relationship, एक ही species के members एक साथ रहने लग गए हैं और धीरे धीरे वो एक दूसरे पर interdependent होते चले गए हैं, एक साथ उनका existence होने लग गया है. इसका एग्जाम्पल है क्वानोफ्लैजेलेट, जो एक स्टॉक से, दे आर द सेसाइल फॉर्म्स, वो स्टॉक से सारे इंडिविजुअल्स अटैच रहते हैं एक सबस्ट्रैटम से, और इस तरह से they are presenting the example of endosymbiotic relationship that we will see. That is very interestingly, ये एक साथ रहते रहते शायद इन्होंने एक दूसरे के कैरेक्टर्स को अटैच्ड होते चले गए हैं, और शायद मल्टीसेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स का जो सबसे प्रिमिटिव लेयर है, दैट इज द पोरिफेरा स्पॉन्जेस, वहाँ शायद इनका एवोल्यूशन वहीं से हुआ है. दैट इज living together. So this is the endosymbiotic relationship. This endosymbiotic relationship can be, this can be expressed here. This is one green algae, that is Chlamydomonas. जब ये बहुत सारे धीरे धीरे ये एक गोनियम कॉलोनी में डेवलप हुए, बहुत सारे एक साथ रहने लग गए, but 4 to 32 cells, still the number is not so much, and ultimately they evolved in the volvox like animals, where hundreds of species, hundreds of members rather, are living together. Or probably इस तरह से endosymbiotic theory of evolution of or emergence of multicellular organisms might have been happened. So this is the evolution of protists based on endosymbiotic theory. This is again one example. This is again very interesting. इसमें ये बताया गया है कि कभी-कभी प्रोकैरियोट्स को जो प्रोटिस्ट हैं वो एनगल्फ कर लेते हैं, दैट इज द प्रोकैरियोट विदाउट न्यूक्लियस. दिस इज द एग्जांपल. कुछ एरोबिक बैक्टीरिया हैं, प्रोकैरियोट्स हैं, जिनको कि कुछ प्रोटिस्ट दे एनगल्फ हियर. Then these prokaryotes, they have converted into the mitochondria, might have converted into the mitochondria. Then they have these are the cyanobacterian species having the cyanobacterian organelles having photosynthetic pigments, and lastly they have evolved as the chloroplast of the plant cell. So this is also a very interesting example जहाँ पे prokaryotes किस तरह से यूकैरियोट्स उनको इनगल्फ करते हैं और स्लोली वो ट्रांसफॉर्म कर लेते हैं उनको इम्पोर्टेंट सेल ऑर्गेनेल्स में, और धीरे धीरे इस तरह के कई यूकैरियोट्स एक साथ रहते रहते मल्टी सेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स में इवॉल्व होते हैं. सो दैट इज द एंडोसिम्बायोटिक थ्योरी ऑफ इवोल्यूशन ऑफ द मल्टी सेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स. नाउ द कोलोनियल प्रोटिस्ट, एज आई हैव टोल्ड यू ऑलरेडी, 3 तरह के होते हैं. Freshwater yellow or brown coloration showing golden algae of phylum Cryophyta are the examples of colonial protists. Then plant-like green algae are the colonial protists, which were earlier kept in protozoa. And then finally the animal-like protists are the protozoans. जिसमें और भी एक आध ग्रुप हैं, प्रोटोजोआ के भी कुछ क्लासेस हैं जो कोलोनियल हैबिट शो करते हैं, बट मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली द क्वानोफ्लैजेलेट ग्रुप ऑफ द फ्लैजेलेटा क्लास ऑफ प्रोटोजोआ, दे आर द मोस्ट brilliant group of the colonial protozoans which live a colonial life. And there is an example of this quanoflagellate is the pterospongia. बहुत सारे quanoflagellates को identify किया गया है living like spending the colonial life, जिसमें pterospongia एक बहुत important group को establish किया गया है, that shows the stage or a connecting link between the protist or the protozoa and the next stage of the multicellular organism, that is the sponges. And they morphologically, these quanoflagellates are exactly like the quanocyte cells of or the collared cells of the poriferan endodermis. And that is probably that shows the colonization habit of the colonial protozoans, how they might have been changed to the poriferans in form of a layer. These quanoflagellates, they assembled together, they started living together, they came attached, forming an endodermal layer of the quanocytic layer or the collared cell layer. So we can say the colonization of colonial protozoans has colonized wide array of aquatic and terrestrial habitats from Arctic and Antarctic to equatorial zones. That is, they are widely distributed, they are found in every area, they are found in every habitat, and they together include a class Quanoflagellata of the phylum Protozoa. A Quanoflagellata has quanocyte-like cells that form a connecting link between Protozoa and Porifera. The quanoflagellates are closest unicellular relatives of the true animals or the metazoan animals or the multicellular animals, that is, they form the metazoa. These tiny protists display complex life histories, including sessile as well as different pelagic stages, जो फ्री स्विमिंग भी हैं और sessile forms भी हैं, जिसका sessile form का सबसे brilliant example है Pterodospongia that we will see now. Now the guanoflagellates have to form many guanoflagellates have the ability to form the colonies. Now these are the descriptions of the guanoflagellata that we have just seen. कैसे वो एक साथ रहते रहते एक दूसरे पर dependent हो जाते हैं. And there are different families. Important 3 families हैं, जिसमें एक मेंबर है साल्पिन जिका रोजेटा. Also it is a guanoflagellate that shows this traditional stage of evolution from unicellular to multicellular metazoans. Now so this is a guanoflagellate colony. See, this is a diagrammatic representation, but of a Pterodospongia, that is the basic, the guanoflagellate that has most probably has evolved into the collared layer of the poriferans. So these are certain explanations of how these collared cells of guanoflagellate might have evolved. This is the stalk. This is the guanoflagellate colony, formed of a number of guanoflagellates and their possible combination to form the multicellularity in advanced stages. Now these are certain important features of the guanoflagellates which have stated their history that you can get from this slide, the history of the guanoflagellates. Now let us come to the Pterodospongia. That is हम already देख चुके हैं कि Pterodospongia वो ग्रुप है guanoflagellata का जो सबसे ज्यादा वाइब्रेंट स्टेज माना जाता है, इंटरमीडिएट स्टेज माना जाता है, एक कनेक्टिंग लिंक माना जाता है in between the protozoa or the protists, rather the simplest acellular or unicellular microorganisms, and from them might have evolved the multicellular organisms, the first example of which is the porifera. As a colony forming guanoflagellate, Pterodospongia is of interest to scientists studying the mechanism of intercellular signaling and adhesion before animals appeared. किस तरह से सेल टू सेल adhesions हुआ, सेल सिग्नलिंग हुई और किस तरह से टिश्यूज का कन्वर्शन हुआ, ये भी Pterodospongia की स्टडी किया गया है. And also not only this, also the ribosomal study, 16S ribosome and 18S ribosomal study of the genome and the genetical study also has established this transformation from the unicellularity to multicellularity condition. These are the certain representations how master. This is a guanoflagellate, that is a diagrammatic structure that may have been converted into these guanoflagellate families, the different guanoflagellate families. Now, as I've already told you, there are 3 important families have been identified in the class Guanoflagellata and order Guanoflagellatioidea, which include the colonial forms. One is Codonocygid. The example is Pterodospongia. That is the most important family. Other 2 families also I have mentioned in some other slide. Now, but let us confine or see the important characteristics of Pterodospongia that represent the other guanoflagellates also, that how these are very important to study the Pterodospongia, how their life cycle and their structure details shows the different stages of the conversion from unicellularity to multicellularity. The life cycle mentioned that the resulted in consolidation of the Guanocida perplexia and Pterodospongia species into Pterodospongia guanojunctata. Additional studies of solitary and colonial species may result in further species consolidation. Now, the classification of these choanoflagellates have been divided into one order and three families. This is the choanoflagellate. Um, these are the classification details of this choanoflagellata, phylum, and sorry, class and order. Now, the important characteristics of these choanoflagellates are they are a group of free living unicellular and colonial flagellates considered to be the closest living relatives to the animals. They are the collared flagellates having a funnel-shaped collar of interconnected macrovilli at the base of a flagellum. In one slide we have seen the structure of these choanoflagellates. These are the microvilli of the collar. This is the main body. This is the structure with the help of which they are feeding. This is their food, and these are the phagocytosis of food particles. This is the flagellum. This is the structure of a single choanoflagellate or protostrongia, we can say. Classification we have seen. Now we are looking into the main characteristics, the morphology as well as the anatomical peculiarities of these choanoflagellates. Their feeding habit, they are having in the collar, they are having the microvilli. Then movement of flagellum creates water current that can propel free swimming choanoflagellates through the water column and track bacteria and detritus against the collar of microvilli where these foodstuffs are engulfed. So this is the digestion part, the food intaking. Then the feeding, they show the filter feeding, providing a critical link within the global carbon cycle, linking the trophic levels. They show the filter feeding, and that filter feeding plays a critical ecological role. Choanoflagellates are of particular interest to evolutionary biologists studying origin of multicellularity in the animals. Now, their habits and habitats, choanoflagellates are either free swimming in water column or sessile adhering to substrate directly or through either the periblast or a thin pedicel. एक पेडिसिल से या एक पेरीब्लास्ट की तरह के स्ट्रक्चर से अगर वो सेसाइल हैं तो अडेयर होकर के रहते हैं, अदरवाइज दे आर फ्री स्विमिंग pelagic forms also. They are thought to be strictly free-living heterotrophic. A number of choanoflagellate relatives, such as members of Ichthyospora or Mesomycetozoa, follow parasitic or pathogenic lifestyle also. There are a few pathogenic or parasitic lifestyle showing choanoflagellates also that too live in groups. Now these are the other structural peculiarities of choanoflagellates. The cell covering vary greatly in structure and composition. Many choanoflagellates build complex basket-shaped houses called lorica from several silica strips cemented together. The functional significance of periplast is still unknown, but in sessile organism, it is thought to aid attachment to the substratum. In planktonic organisms, the periplast increases drag, thereby counteracting the force generated by the flagellum and increasing feeding efficiency. That is the help in filter feeding. Then each choanoflagellate has a single flagellum that we have already seen. Then the movement of the flagellum draws water through collar, and bacteria and detritus are captured. Water current generated by the flagellum push free swimming cells along as in animal sperm. Animal sperm की तरह के भी discharge में ये help करते हैं. Most other flagellates pulled by their flagella. In addition to single apical flagellum surrounded by actin-filled microvilli that characterize choanoflagellates, the internal organization of organelles in the cytoplasm is constant. A flagellar basal body sites at the base of the apical flagellum, and a second non-flagellar body rests at a right angle to flagellar base. Nucleus occupies an apical to central position in the cell, and food vacuoles are positioned in the basal region of the cytoplasm. Now, the life cycle of the choanoflagellates is very peculiar, showing different groups maintaining a homeostasis, and that involves the calcium homeostasis. It resembles a modern sperm cell, and the quanoflagellates in appearance sometimes they resemble modern sperm cell also. This farnesol is one type of quanoflagellate which preceded the animals. The quanoflagellates grow vegetatively. Asexual reproduction is the main mode of reproduction in quanoflagellates. However, reproductive cycle of quanoflagellates remains to be elucidated again. This is the details of the sexual reproduction also has been observed by some of the taxonomists, and however, the details of the sexual reproduction is yet to be known in details. Uh, Sexual reproduction may be considered as their part of life cycle. The much detail of the sexual reproduction is not yet known, but certain reproductive gametes may be produced during their life cycle, which gametes they exactly may not be formed, as the in ciliates we have observed might be that two different individuals come together, fuse together, and behave as the sexual gametes and give rise to the new forms. That may be a form of sexual reproduction, and probably that is found in unfavorable conditions, that is preceded by the incestment, which involves the retraction of flagellum and collar and its encasement in an electron-dense fibrillar ball. On transfer to fresh media, excessment occurs, and uh, it is yet to be directly observed. बहुत details नहीं देखा गया, but most probably क्वानोफ्लैगेलेट्स अपने माइक्रोविलाई को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर लेते हैं फाइब्रिल्स को, और इस तरह से इंसिस्टेड कंडीशन में रहते हैं, और जब कंडीशंस फेवरेबल होते हैं then they show the existment and development into the new forms. The evidence for sexual reproduction has been reported in quanoflagellate species Salpinogisa rosetta. The evidence also has been reported for the presence of conserved neotic genes in quanoflagellates Monocyga brevicollis and Monocyga ovata. So all type of the reproduction life cycle phenomenon the quanoflagellates show, and that type of this colonial type of quanoflagellate living has created a hypothesis, that is colonial flagellated hypothesis, it is said. This hypothesis says that the first multicellular animals evolved from the flagellated protists that lived in colonies. As we have already seen कि किस तरह से ये this hypothesis says कि किस तरह से colonial flagellates, quanoflagellates में जो members हैं वो एक साथ रहने लगे हैं और more and more interdependent होते गए हैं, और endosymbiotic relationship के आधार पर they might have given rise to the multicellular organism or a simple animal. Now, this theory has been supported by a number of facts. However, this is just a hypothesis yet. अभी तक ये hypothesis ही है, अभी तक इसे बहुत authenticity as a theory or as an established fact is not have been given. Then another theory of the evolution of multicellular organisms from these quanoflagellates is the theory of a common ancestor. This is another theory. That this theory is also in a state of hypothesis yet, but it has got certain supports also, like that of endosymbiotic theory. This theory says that all animals came from a single unicellular life form that may have taken colonial shape and then multicellular level. And this theory has support of the genetic level. The first life forms was universal common ancestor. This because of all organisms shared DNA. We also have evidence from the fossil record, embryos, and an army of squabbling scientists who would simply love to prove the theory of evolution wrong. The problem is its scientific fact, and the theory of evolution proves the theory of a common ancestor. डीएनए का एग्जिस्टेंस बहुत ही आसानी से ये प्रूफ करता है कि कोई तो एक कॉमन एंसेस्टर है जिसमें डीएनए था, जो हाईएस्ट फॉर्म तक में किसी न किसी रूप में डीएनए प्रेजेंट है, एंड दैट थ्योरी इज अ कॉमन ancestor theory is yet has got a very strong stand here. The presence now, this evolutionary history of protists that we have seen endosymbiotic theory, किस तरह से endosymbiotic relationship में से यूनिसेलुलर ऑर्गेनिज्म से मल्टीसेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स का इवॉल्वमेंट हुआ होगा. This theory is based on this endosymbiotic relationship, which was laid down based on fossil and evidence form. एंडोसिम्बायोटिक रिलेशनशिप और एंडोसिम्बायोटिक थ्योरी को बहुत सपोर्ट्स मिला हुआ है, एंड दिस थ्योरी सपोर्ट्स के unicellular protists might have given rise to the multicellular organism, of course in a different number of ways. So this endosymbiotic theory and common ancestor theory, they have got the supports. Now the next important interesting part of these colonial choanoflagellates is their relationship with the metazoans. Now, how they are associated with the metazoans, that close relationship has been established in a number of ways. As we have already seen, the details you can take from here: 18S ribosomal rDNA and 16S ribosomal rRNA studies, and have been shown that the comparison of mitochondrial genome sequences from a choanoflagellate and 3 sponges confirm the placement of choanoflagellates as an outgroup to metazoa and negate the possibility that choanoflagellates evolved from metazoans. That is according to Larva et al. In 2005. So finally, recent studies of gene expressed in choanoflagellates have revealed that choanoflagellates synthesize homologs of metazoan cell signaling and adhesion genes. So these are the basic gene-based or the genetic fact-based assumptions how the metazoans might have evolved from the colonial choanoflagellates. The choanocytes or the colloid cells of sponges considered among the most basal metazoa have the same basic structure as the choanoflagellates. जो choanoflagellates का structure है वो काफी resemble करता है colloid cell से, establishing the common ancestor theory of the evolution of the multicellular organisms. The last common ancestor of animals and choanoflagellates was unicellular, perhaps forming simple colonies. In contrast, the last common ancestor of an eumetazoan animal was a multicellular organism with differentiated tissues, a definite body plan, and the embryonic development. This is also very interesting to know. This is also have been the embryonic level पर भी इस theory को support किया गया है, assuming that these multicellular colloid structures, they might have assumed the shape of the cellular layer, and in the embryological study also supports this their choanoflagellatic common ancestor theory or choanoflagellate theory of the multicellular evolution is supported by the embryological studies also. That is the structure of a blastula that is considered that in the due course, these choanoflagellates may have attained the arrangement in form of a blastula and further in form of the gastrule. So embryological studies also describe or explain to some extent the development of the multicellularity from the unicellular organisms like the choanoflagellates. So now these are the 3 families of the members of the choanoflagellates in which are included, and their chemical structure and their position, their morphology, and their electronic microscopic structures show the conversion of a single choanoflagellate protist to converting into the pterospongia and then to the body wall of a porifera or the sponge. So, and this is a molecular phylogeny of guanoflagellates and their certain examples. In this, I haven't gone into much detail because it's too much time taking. So I think this very interesting topic we have seen together today, and that is the colonial protozoans, which are the guanoflagellates. And one of the most important type of this guanoflagellate is the pterospongia, whose structure and physiological behaviors and the reproductive behaviors mention that how these guanoflagellates might have converted into the multicellular organisms on the different lines, that is the common ancestor theory, endosymbiotic relationship theory, then flagellate hypothesis. So these are certain theories that explain how these colonial protozoans have got the evolutionary significance, though they are lacking any evolutionary clad and cladistics. So with this, I end this topic today. I think this will help you. If there are any further questions, queries, or you need any further explanations, write in the comment box and I'm ready to help you. So thank you. Thank you so much.